Greetings, everyone. Well, you've heard me say it countless times before, and I'm going to say it again. 1982 was a great summer for movies. Especially for sci-fi and fantasy fans. There was just so much great sci-fi and fantasy that year. Geeks like me were just wetting themselves. Geeks of all ages were wetting themselves. There were just wet geeks everywhere. So, one of the big ones that people really fondly remember was a little movie that kind of came out of left field. I don't know that we'd really heard much about it before. It just kind of sprung up out of nowhere. And it was this epic fantasy adventure, the likes of which the world had never seen before. It married the creative genius of Brian Froud, who was already a well-established fantasy artist who had done a number of books. Most notably, he did one called Fairies, which was quite good. He had a very dark fantasy kind of look at it, very gritty and realistic and just crazily imaginative, which hadn't really been seen much at the time, except maybe the works of Frank Frazetta, of course, and some of the artists doing the Tolkien artwork and stuff like that. But beyond that, I mean, that was art sort of based on established concepts and such. The stuff that Brian Froud did was just crazily unique and different. And another guy who is quite creative and crazily unique and different, you may have heard of him, goes by the name of Jim Henson, saw his work, and, well, to make a long story short, they teamed up and did not one but two movies together. The first of which was this little gem from 1982, The Dark Crystal. Now, The Dark Crystal has been re-released a number of times on DVD and often gets concurrent releases with the other movie they did together, which of course was Labyrinth. So often whenever there's a re-release of Dark Crystal, there's usually a re-release of Labyrinth not far behind it. There's been a couple of releases since this edition, but I haven't picked them up because I love this edition. There was an anniversary edition that came out not too long ago, which I understand has more extras than this one did. But I haven't got it yet. And then I've also heard that there's a Blu-ray release of both Dark Crystal and Labyrinth on the horizon, so definitely going to grab that when it comes out. I think that's the main reason I'm holding off on getting the anniversary editions that came out, because I want to see if the Blu-ray edition has the same extras that were on those ones, and then I'll just get that. If not, well, I'll end up with a few copies of the movies just to have all the extras. But the main reason I keep this one is because it's just got such cool swag in it. And that's what we're going to take a look at today on the Multimedia Chronicles. Ha! You thought I completely forgot the title, didn't you? Well, I didn't. And here it is. Go! There you go. I did the old point and go thing that I haven't done for a while. Anyway, let's not waste any time. Let's dive right in here. This is the Dark Crystal Collector's Edition. Now, one of the reasons I like this edition is just because it looks so damn classy on your shelf. I mean, look at this. It's great. It's got this kind of book look to it. You got your contents listed on the back. But rather than spoiling the surprise, let's actually take a look. So it opens up like a book. There you go, nice and shiny. It's glossy without being a fingerprint magnet, which I like. I usually prefer matte finishes for that reason, because I find glossy stuff attracts fingerprints too much. So okay, first off, we have this Cenotype, which is actually a frame from the film. Now, the frame that's here is what you see here. So it's a nice shot of the landscape with a shot of Jen right there. I don't know if you can, yeah, you can see that okay. There. Now, if you've ever wondered what a 35mm film frame looks like, this is what it looks like. So if you look at the actual film frame there, you can see it. Now, if this was from an actual film print, you wouldn't actually see these black bars. The image would be stretched, because this is actually a film that's done in the CinemaScope aspect ratio, 2.35 to 1. So it would be stretched and then projected through an anamorphic lens in the projector, which would then correct the aspect ratio. Now, down the sides here, you can see what looks like, if we hold it this way, looks like little sound waves, like waves. like when you look at a visual representation of a wave, that's exactly what those are. That's what's called optical audio, and that's what most audio, like film, sound film, used for years before digital audio became standard. Now, if this had a digital audio track, you would actually see little fuzzy things in between the sprockets here. You can see the sprockets. There, you can see the sprockets. Like the plastic in between the sprockets would actually have a little, if you looked at it up close, it would just look like sort of television static with a Dolby Digital logo in it, and that's where the Dolby Digital audio is encoded. And then there's other audio information which is put into other parts of the frame. Wherever there's space on the frame, they stick stuff in, and then you need a special reader on the projector to decode it. But there you go. That gives you a general idea of what a film frame looks like. Now if we pull back again, we'll dive back into the rest of the contents. Okay, so we got our little film frame there, which is cool. We'll just set that aside. And then here, we actually have a very special thing. It's a letter from Cheryl Henson, who is Jim Henson's daughter. Now, she doesn't often talk publicly about her father's work and whatnot, so it's great to get something like this, because it really gives you about as close to a first-hand insight into what Jim was like as we're ever likely to see without actually having known him. So that's very cool. And this is one of the items that prompts me to keep it. This is actually, well, you can see that, but this is actually a reproduction of Jim Henson's notepad, where he sketched out his original ideas for the movie. And it's really interesting reading, because you read through this, and again, you get a little bit more insight into Jim's creative process, and you see how, there's some stuff on the back as well. So it's essentially like photocopies of his original notepad. So it's really interesting to read this and compare it to how the final film turned out, because there are quite a few differences. There's a lot of similarities, but still quite different. And then the edition itself is just a single dual layer disc. It's a little bit scratched up. When I got this, it was actually loose in the case, but they only had the one copy left, so I didn't really have any choice. So there you go. And here's just a bit of a closer look at the artwork on the cover for you. It's quite nice. I like it. So there you go. What is quite possibly the most ultimate edition, at least in terms of swag, and looking cool on the bookshelf, that has ever been released of the Dark Crystal, at least the best edition that I've ever seen, certainly. Although I do know the anniversary edition that came out a little more recently is in fact a 2-disc edition, so that means probably higher bit rate for the movie, which is always a good thing, and more extras. But, you know, between that and this, Dark Crystal fans should be pretty happy. It'd be nice if they could do like a version with all of this stuff, plus all the extras from the other one, and do it all in high def. That would be like the ultimate, like some big collector's gift set, you know? Something like the size of the E.T. set, but for the Dark Crystal. Yeah, you know you want that. In other sort of related news, one of the reasons I wanted to do this one now is because there's talk of a sequel in the works. There's been talk of a sequel in the works for quite a while. But it seems like a lot of movies from 1982 are being revisited now. I mean, we've got the sequel to Tron coming out, of course, which was also 1982. There's been rumors flying around of a Blade Runner sequel, which I really hope never happens. There's talk of a sequel for this. Oh yeah, The Thing. There's talk of a remake of The Thing, or possibly a prequel, or possibly a sequel, or possibly just a complete remake. Which was itself a remake of the 50s version, but yeah. Hollywood just needs to get creative again. It's like they're returning to the well of 1982, which was an incredibly creative year, and they're just rehashing it. You know, it's like, come on. Where's the imagination? Where's the creativity? Where's the next Dark Crystal? The other thing that was cool about the Dark Crystal, actually, when it came out, was in the early 80s, there really wasn't a lot of really good fantasy movies. You had some animated ones, but there really wasn't anything in the way of live-action fantasy stuff that was good. I mean, there was a few that came out. Of course, you had Conan, which everybody enjoys, but mainly for the cheese factor. But there really wasn't much. Most of what we saw was either, you know, Conan or Conan ripoffs. So like really low budget direct to video Conan stuff. Like there was one called, I think it was Deathstalker or something like that. They did a whole series of those. Some guy in a loincloth with a big sword. Yeah, it's not phallically suggestive at all, is it? But it was always that kind of thing. We didn't really have quality fantasy. Now, fantasy as a literary genre was taking off. There was a lot of really good fantasy novels, and there was, of course, Dungeons and Dragons was really picking up steam at the time, and still going to this day. And we had a lot of good fantasy games for computers, like role-playing games and stuff like that, but there really wasn't much in the way of movies. So when something like this comes along that just transports you to this whole other world, like pure fantasy world, the likes of which had never been seen before and has never been seen since. I mean, this is truly a unique fantasy world. It's not like anything in any other fantasy story I've ever seen or read or played. Truly unique and different, and it's great. But there wasn't anything at the time. So when something like that came out, like The Dark Crystal, it was a real treat because things like that were so rare. And the phone's ringing, so that's my cue to go. That's it from me to you for now, so until next time, sayonara! Get The Dark Crystal, it's awesome! Bye!